Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the December 2016 Owner Report webinar. It will be on technology in Florida calf loss. My name is Raoul Boughton and I am an assistant professor specializing in wildlife ecology and conservation here at the IFAS Range Cattle Research and Education Center. At the conclusion of today's presentation, there will be time for questions and my contact information will be displayed. At that time, you'll be able to type your question in the GoToWebinars panel for questions, or you are welcome to send me an email or give me a call later on. Thank you for attending. So today we're talking about a big interest to the industry, and that's calf loss. So calf loss is interesting because that's what everybody makes money on in the cow-calf operation, is calves. So what's the problem? Excuse me. Part of the problem is how much calf loss occurs in Florida and how much calf loss occurs in the industry in general. But to put that in a positive light, let's look at how much calf loss occurs in just a general wildlife species to start with. This will make you feel better. This is white-tailed deer, and you're looking at a survival curve. So as that curve decreases, that's the percent of animals remaining alive. So in this graph, you can see in the first 1 or 2 days of life, white-tailed deer actually lose 20% of their population. So you only have 80% of fawns still alive. Okay? By 10 days of age, 50% of fawns have actually been removed by the population. And by the time you're 60 days of age, as a fawn for white-tailed deer, there's probably only 30% probability that you'll still be alive. Okay. That's really typical of many, many wildlife populations. Doesn't matter whether you talk about mammals, birds, all sorts of things. Within your first year of life or when you're a youngster, you have a really, really high probability of death. So how do we compare as a livestock industry? We would hope a lot better, and that's true. On the same scale, what you can see here is cattle survivorship. And the black line in this second graph is national cattle survivorship. So by 30 days of age, there's only been about 4% loss of calves nationally. That increases slowly over time till you're more than a year old. See, this x-axis is slightly different here. But when you're 360 days of age, the population of calves, you probably only lost 8% of your whole national cohort. That's a lot different to white-tailed deer. Now, the big problem we have in Florida is that we don't follow that national average for many, many ranches. And as in the industry, you probably would like to. This red line is not fact. That's just me playing around. And is that what Florida looks like? We actually don't know, and that's a big issue. We want to know. So how do we learn that? We have to study it. But why is it important to characterize? Raising calves is our money. It's our profitability. It's how successful you will be. If we're losing lots of calves, even a few percent can make a big difference between profits and not so good profits. It's been one of the hardest areas to conduct good research in because of high logistical issues. Cattle are spread across the landscape, and actually tracking true calf loss in true field conditions is a logistical problem. So how do you find that calf if it's having a high probability of death within its first few hours of life? You have to find it and follow it. So identifying the causes that most affect calf loss in Florida is what we're trying to do. And this will allow us to focus our resources and research to provide the greatest economic return to producers in the future. And if you think about this, an increase in 1% survival of calves in Florida at the state calf herd size is about 690,000 calves. That would be 6,900 calves for the state every year if we could improve calf loss just by 1%. Let's talk a little bit about national calf loss. So 94% of calves are born alive and survive to weaning nationally. And this is standard across all herd sizes, small herds or large herds. Of those 6% that actually died, 4% are lost before weaning, and approximately 2 to 3% are often stillborn or born dead, and often causes are not known. If we break that down a little further, you can look at it this way. Born dead of all the calf loss that's been recorded is about 40%. So these are possibly gestation issues, birthing issues at time of birth, possibly genetic issues causing malformations in calves. 24 hours or less after birth, we lose 18 to 20% of calves within 24 hours of birth. And that's the hard part to track. How do you find those calves and what the cause is? Is it inability of calf to stand? Is it related to genetics? Is it predators? These sorts of questions. Is it malnutrition? And we lose another approximate 20% by 3 weeks after birth. So in combination, from birth to 3 weeks of age, you're losing between 35 and 40% of calves. Of calf loss, sorry, not of calves, of the calf loss, 35 to 40%. And relatively little by the time you get post 3 weeks. So it's about 17 to 20% after 3 weeks of age. So we're really interested in understanding that early calf loss, late gestation period before 3 weeks. Some of the causes that have been reported as most common by the national statistics have been things like digestive problems, respiratory problems. Birth-related problems is a really big one, and you can think about that. You're all on ranches, you know what young cows and first-time breeders are like. That's where you'll have a lot of these birth-related problems. Let's call it stochastic or like unusual conditions, so weather-related causes, freezes, droughts, floods at the time of birth and around those cattle caught have been documented causing a lot of the calf loss nationally. Predators are here too, so about 4 to 5% of calf loss is caused by predators nationally. Now this is national, it's not necessarily what happens in Florida, and we seem to have more calf loss here. That's probably related not just to us, the way we actually ranch, it's more related to the environment in terms of the subtropical environment. Because it's true that calf loss is much higher in many subtropical countries than it is in the temperate grazing systems. So in Florida, what do we know? We know from the UF research centers of a 20-year summary that we have about a 6% average loss in those research herds. It's similar to the national average. It's much, much higher in first and second time breeders, so 12%. Of that 20-year summary, cause of those calf losses was not recorded very well throughout that period. This is less than many operations in Florida, and I'm going to show you some graphs related to that in a minute. So can management of UF herds be replicated in an industry setting? What is being done differently at UF research centers? Well, there's high management level. There's always lots of people there. There's high inputs to those research herds, and there's lots of activity, which probably mean that you're seeing issues as they arrive and something can be done. And it's also keeping away things like malnutrition, poor nutrients, predators. So all the things that we think of that cause calf loss are reduced in these research center settings. So on the ranch reported losses. There was a 2008 directed calf loss survey to ranchers in Florida. There was 46 ranchers that responded, and it encompassed about 144,000 breeding animals, and it included both cows and heifers. 28 ranchers of that 46 run more than 1,000 cows, 9 run between 500 and 1,000, and 9 ranchers run about 0 to 500 cows. This was conducted by a lady named Jody Termine. Some of the questions and some of the responses that brought calf loss to a research interest for me is that, do you feel calf loss is a problem? So asking ranchers. 61% of ranchers reported they felt in their system that calf loss was a problem. What do you feel your average calf loss might be in a year? This can be quite hard to track, but here's some of the responses. And what you can look at here is that greater than 6%, the national average, we can see 48% of these ranchers reported a greater than the national average of calf loss, with some of them, with 10% of them greater than 11%. And 20% of those ranchers greater than 9 or 10% calf loss. So these are considerably more than what occurs nationally and what occurs at UF research centers. This is quite similar. When are you losing calves? And it's similar to what's been reported, 59% within the first 10 days. So within the first 3 weeks, calf loss, that's where most of it is going to occur. Of interest to a wildlife biologist is whether or not predators are an actual problem. There are 49% of ranchers reported they perceive predators to be part of the problem of calf loss in Florida. We don't know how much that actually causes, and we don't know a lot of the time whether or not predators are just scavenging that 2 to 3% of calves that may be stillborn. So there's some things we need to work out to actually understand of how much predators are really a problem. So we designed a study to do this, and the only way we could do this was with new technology. Other ways are just logistically impossible and would be too much activity around herds that would not normally have that, and it would change how predators react, how cows react, how the whole system is actually being in place. We want to identify the causes as they currently are. So this was to undertake a very thorough calf loss study, and it's actually will be the best one ever conducted and on the most calves. We want to quantify that cause of calf loss from late gestation to weaning. We're going to establish the most common causes of calf loss in Florida, and based on what we find out, we want to provide sound advice on how to reduce calf loss to Florida cattlemen. That's priority one. The second priority is, if we don't know it, is we want to define those data gaps and try and provide information or direction to what's needed to fix those calf loss problems. So how do we do it? Why is it such a problem? Because we actually have to find the calf at birth in a field setting. So we can do that with sensor technology now. This is relatively new technology. It's probably been around for 10 years for dairy cattle and horses, but it's really never been applied to beef cattle research. But this is a vaginal birthing insert, and we put it into known pregnant cows, and we can track when that insert is actually expelled, and it allows us to record that point of calf loss and go to that location. After the calf is actually born, we would find it using the sensor. We would then actually track mortality of calves using VHF beacons. And you can see that in the right-hand bottom corner, and it's the right ear of that calf. It's a yellow tag with a black antenna. So actually getting, we're solving some of the logistics, and we want to get a lot of sample size. And these two things make these sorts of studies very expensive to run. So the technology is advanced far enough that it's commercial, and this is what it's called. It's a Velphone sensor. We didn't want to trust that it would just work, so we actually are doing a sensor trial right now, and all the sensors and base station and network access has been provided in kind by the company for this trial study. And we deployed 22 sensors the 13th of September 2016. And you can see some sensors here as they come in a red box with magnets. You can see the spider, plastic spider, which is a way it's actually held into the canal. it's disinfected, and then it's placed in the vaginal canal, right up against the cervix. We then track it. So real time, I can actually see temperature profiles on my computer here at the Range Cattle Research Center, and I can track what's going on with these cattle. I can see if they're overheating, I can see if they're laying down, and you can see this is a typical daily profile. Heating up in the day, this is in centigrade, but that's about 103 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. That's actually cows that are in heat stress when they're that hot, and that's pretty typical in Florida. Maybe one of the reasons we get so much calf loss. And the second graph is actually our first expulsion event. So this is success. So we see our typical up and down motion of heat. And then if you focus in on the red part of the graph, you can see the final couple of days, that temperature profile is dropping, significantly dropping. And when it significantly drops like that, it tells us that the calving is imminent, or it's about to happen. And then suddenly you get a cow in a red box at the top there, and that means the actual device has been expelled, and I've received a text and it's been shown on a computer, and whoever is in the field has also received a text saying the device or sensor has been expelled, go find the calf. So therefore we can go find that actual sensor, and hopefully the calf is nearby, and voila, you find sensor, which has a tracking device in it itself, and we find a calf. And so this calf here is less than an hour old. It was actually up really quick, and found it was obviously not a calf loss, but if it was, in a real study, we would collect that carcass and we would take samples of that carcass. We would actually catch the mother or knock the mother down and actually take samples from the mother also, so that we could actually pair a calf with the mother to actually understand some of the causes that might have been the reason for that calf loss. So after we actually find the calf, normally we would catch that calf and we would attach what's known as a VHF transmitter. This is old technology. It's been around for many, many years, and it's easily trackable. My kids can do it. Anybody can do this sort of thing. And it's basically a beacon signal, and the beacon goes bip, 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 and it will change its pattern of signaling if there's a mortality event. What's really nice about both these technologies now is that you could see it was a data logger sending information to me across computer network, so it could see what was happening with all cattle with sensors in them, and that's true of the calves with VHF tags in their ears too, that a base station tower will check for mortality and maintain that constantly. So if there's a mortality event, which is when that signal changes, we'll be able to know that a calf of 10, 20, 30 days old has suddenly gone into a mortality event of some sort, and we can go and investigate as soon as possible. We probably are not going to find all of those calves because we don't know what actually took them, but hopefully it will increase our sample size enormously. So one of the things that we are doing is tracking diseases, which has never been done very well on a big study system with calves. And so these are some of the diseases we'll be actually tracking, and they'll be performed mostly on both cows and calves. And an unsuccessful cow and calf pair, and we will have several hundred of these, will be compared to a group of successful cows and calves, and we'll be looking for what's different between that cow-calf pair that failed compared to that cow-calf pair that did not. These necropsies are being undertaken by the Bronson Animal Diagnostic Lab, and this is a large, coordinated, collaborative effort between veterinarians, state employees, and researchers. Here's a list of some of them. I'm leading the effort. That means I get to sit in the office most of the time. I'd rather be in the field, but I get to go out and play with veterinarians, putting inserts in, and then students will be actually tracking calf loss in the field in collaboration with ranchers. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, you can type them in now, and these are my contact details. While we wait for all the online people to ask questions, are there any questions from the audience?
Sure. So you saw that one of the tables was showing the tag 5 predators on day from 0 to 10 and from up to 3 weeks, but there's no difference. Like it was 4.7%. And I would assume that from 0 to 10 days, the mortality by predators would be higher. Why is there
I agree. There's a lot of, I think there are quite a lot of issues with surveyed results on the national scale and what's pushed into it. You'll probably find some of those later predator events are larger predators from generally the west. So we're talking about things like pumas, wolves especially, and so those statistics would be in some of those national databases too. There's also been a big focus on wolves and puma in the west, so it's probably a bit biased. In Florida, the only predators that are going to cause really late mortality are going to be Florida panther and black bear. At a smaller scale, maybe coyotes here. But the coyote deaths are probably going to be in, like you said, that 0 to 10 day window. There is a little bit of evidence to suggest that panthers or pumas don't actually go for the young, really small one. I mean, that's a snack when they can quite easily handle a much larger calf, so they have the ability to take down a bigger animal. Okay, well, this will be the last owner report webinar. Beginning in January, we will be hosting a series of faculty program highlights which will be presented through 2017. John Arthington will host the first event on January 20th, sharing highlights from his animal science program. The presentation will begin at 11 a.m. and last approximately 40 minutes with time for questions at the end. You are welcome to join us here at the Centre for this event or participate by webinar. Visit our website or Facebook page for the webinar registration link. Thank you again for attending today's program.